Hello lovelies, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Luce. I am a fantasy obsessed book lover, and on my channel we talk about all things books. This week is going to be no different. We are going to be doing the end of year book tag. I have been seeing loads of amazing creators do this. In particular, my girl Gabrielle. I saw her do this and I have loved seeing her answers, everybody else's answers. I think it's really nice to be able to have an end of year recap of sorts and to deep dive in with some questions. So without further ado, let's dive in, grab yourselves a drink, let's get cozy, and let's talk all things books. So the end of year book tag is approximately 20 questions, deep diving into the reading year that you've had, looking at your favourite reads, your most disappointing reads, reads that have been big, reads that have been small, reads that you might have forgotten about, all that kind of stuff. And when I had a quick glance over the list, I was actually surprised at how many books came to mind that I'd maybe put to one side or forgotten about. When it got to the longest book that I'd read, I actually forgot that I'd read that book. So it's interesting to just go back over things and have a little bit of time to reflect. So the first question is the most disappointing read of the year. There was a couple of contenders. I actually haven't had too many disappointing reads this year, but the one that's at the top of the list is sadly The Hunted Heir by Holly Renee. This is book 2 in this series. Now, book 1 I loved. I thought it was a really promising start to the series. I think I gave it 4 stars. I loved everything about it and I loved the presence that the male main character had in that series. When book 2 came out, I was so excited to carry on with that story and to see what that world had to offer. And oh my good God, I was so disappointed. I could not believe what I was reading. It felt so rushed for me personally, and I felt like the plot didn't really go anywhere, and our male main character just lost himself completely. Everything that I loved about him in the first book just disappeared with book 2. I felt like I was reading about a completely different character. It didn't hold my interest, and it was like 256 pages or something. You just felt like you were going round and round in circles, and it was just really disappointing for me, and I just didn't enjoy it. And so for that reason as well, I won't be continuing with that series. It's kind of lost me at that. This next one I'm excited to talk about. Question 2 is Underdog book of the year. I will never stop yapping about this series, so here's my most underhyped read of 2024. Doesn't take a genius to work out that it was obviously going to be Lady Crystal Bloom, the Crystal Bloom series by Sarah A. Parker, one of my all-time favourite authors. I've already spoken so much about her on here already, and she has such a special place in my heart as an author. Her books, for me, every single one of them that I have read have been a 5-star read, which is unheard of. No other author has matched that kind of track history and track record in terms of reading for me, and this series is so underhyped, it is criminal. Here are the reasons why I loved To Bleed a Crystal Bloom. Number 1, the tension. The tension. This is the blueprint of what tension should be like in every book moving forward. It's going to ruin you for other books in terms of tension, because the tension in this sizzles, it's electric, and you feel every single interaction so deeply, I cannot even put into words. This is a dark retelling of Rapunzel. It's dark romantic fantasy, it's new adult, and it's unlike anything you're going to have read before. Emotionally, you're going to go through it. It's going to make you feel things. You are going to go on an emotional roller coaster with these characters, and definitely check the triggers before you give this a read. But I cannot recommend this enough. It's incredible and truly one of a kind. So Olathe, our female main character in this, when she's younger, she goes through a very traumatic series of events in the beginning of the book, and she's saved by this High Lord. He takes her to his castle and she becomes his ward and is under his care, effectively. Then we jump to the present, and that's where the story begins effectively. And she has set this safety line for herself within the perimeters of this castle where she will not step outside. If she stays within the safety lines, she's safe. That's what she believes. And so that's how she exists. She leads quite a sheltered life. And so she starts off in this book, in this series, quite naive and quite innocent, because she hasn't experienced a lot within the world. And the story kind of proceeds from there. I don't want to say too much because I want you to have the full experience if you choose to read these books, but I honestly cannot recommend them enough. There's 3 books out at the moment. It's not a complete series, but oh my God, those 3 books are going to have you mind, body and soul. Question number 3, a book that was overhyped. For me, that has to be Masters of Death by Olivia Blake, for the reason that everybody that I seem to hear talk about Olivia Blake loves her writing. This was my first Olivia Blake book. Sadly, we are not a match. We're not compatible, I don't think. People that love this say that it's witty, it's funny, it's clever, it's unique, and it is all of those things. But personally, our sense of humours were not aligning. I didn't find it funny. I found the interactions taking me out of the story instead of in. I didn't feel connected to the characters. I didn't feel connected to what was happening. It took quite a while for things to kind of take off, and even when they did take off, I was like, it's not grabbing me. It is not grabbing me. So I finished it, but afterwards I was like, that just was a bit of a miss for me. Number 4, a book that I loved in the moment but don't think about now, probably has to be The Song of the March by S.N. Gaither. When I read this, I was so swept away by how unique this was. This for me was romantasy at its finest. I loved the world, I loved the characters. There was so much to rave about with this, and in my head at the time I was like, wait, why is nobody talking about this? Why are people not screaming from the rooftops about this book? And I soon found out that the majority of people do not enjoy the rest of the series. They say you read book 1, it's amazing, and then book 2 and 3 just absolutely flop off. And I was like, ugh. It doesn't give me the incentive to want to carry on reading. Yes, I want to experience the series myself and form my own opinions, obviously. But by the time book 2 had arrived, once I'd ordered it, it had been a couple of weeks. I started reading other series, and so it just lost momentum for me. And the fact that people weren't saying great things, I was like, ugh. And I haven't continued with the rest of this series yet. So it kind of ends up going to the back of my mind a little bit. But I did love this first book so much. I thought it was an amazing start to the series. And I definitely do want to carry on with the series to see how I find it for myself. So I definitely will pick it up, but it's just lost a little bit of momentum for me is where we're at with this one. Favourite book couples of the year? I love this question because there is nothing I love more than a dynamic duo. And there's a few. There's a few on my list. So first up, we have got Luther and DM. Love these two together. Currently in the middle of book 3, Heat of the Everflame, within the Kindred Curse saga. And this series is hitting so hard, I cannot even tell you. And these two together, I am rooting for them so much. I don't know the outcome of this story yet, and I'm currently at a point where I'm like, please, 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 just give them what they deserve. They deserve to be together. Let's make it happen. But gods, please. And then we've got Wit and Inez from What the River Knows. Now, these two have got something special. They have got chemistry, they've got banter, they've got witty interactions, and the two are quite a formidable pair. They make quite the duo, and I just love their romance. I think it has that extra something special, and I could read about them all day long. Then we've got one of my all-time favourites. We've got Khan and Rave from When the Moon Hatched. These two can do no wrong. They are both strong, they are both independent. Separately are forces to be reckoned with. You combine them together and you have got a powerhouse duo. We'll wipe the floor with anyone, everyone, the world. They're taking no prisoners, and I love them and adore them. And I love their romantic interactions. The spice, the intimacy between those two as well, I just think is extra beautiful. Then we've got Jean Cadman from the Fog of the Air series. This is the blueprint for enemies to lovers, I think, when it comes to the Cruel Prince. I know that the Cruel Prince is not necessarily romance-led, that it's more political-led, but the romance in this, for me, was so good because it kept you on your toes. You didn't know what was coming. And I just love these two together. I was like, yeah, they're meant to be. And then finally, from a romance book, we have got Daphne and Miles from Funny Story by Emily Henry. They're almost polar opposites. They're yin and yang, but their differences marry up and balance each other out so perfectly. And how he is with her, I love so much. I feel like everybody deserves the kind of love that they have. Whatever it is, they have just got that magic something. Then we've got 5 main characters of the year. Who are we trying to kid here? There's quite a few. But we're gonna go with the Red Rising series first. So from that series, we've got Mustang and we've got Ragnar. Mustang is amazing because she's just an incredible female. She is strong. She really adds and brings so much to that story. I cannot imagine the world without her in it. And then you've also got Ragnar, more of a side character, and he's special. He really, really is special. Every interaction with him, I just feel like is so precious and really warms my heart, and I just love him in that series. He brings a different dimension to that world. I will forever, forever Love him. And we've got Kingfisher from Quicksilver. Callie really knew what she was doing when she wrote Kingfisher. She knew what she was doing. She really made sure we were well fed when she wrote Kingfisher. That man. Yeah. And then we've got Roden from Crystal Bloom series. He is, again, one of the best male main characters I've ever read, if not the best male main character I've ever read, potentially. He is one of my all-time favorites. Whatever he is, however he's written, all of his characteristics, I need them in every single book I read from now on, because once you've read him, there's just no going back. He sets the bar so astronomically high, there's just no comparison. And then we've got Rave from When the Moon Hatched. She is strong, she's fierce, she's feisty, she stands up for herself, she knows what she wants, and she's also going through a lot mentally. In that sense, she's not only strong on all of these things, but she's also relatable too. And I think it's quite easy to see a lot of her traits within myself personally. And I love that about her. I felt seen, I felt understood, and she is just, I love her. I love every single thing about her. Then we've got Inez from What the River Knows. Again, strong, feisty, impulsive, and a little bit reckless, which keeps you on your toes throughout the story. You don't really know what's happening with her, and I like it that way personally. She keeps things interesting, and especially because of the time that those books are set in, she really steps outside of the boundaries of what is expected of her as a woman, and she doesn't care. She knows what she wants in life, and she is going for it. A book that I cannot stop recommending has to be When the Moon Hatched. This book is on a pedestal so high nothing can touch it. Away, I was blown with this book and continue to be. It's going to be one of those ones where I'll reread and reread and reread and reread this time and time again, because this, perfection. Absolute perfection. I wish I'd have annotated this when I read it, but that means it's no excuse for me to reread it next year and to annotate the heck out of this book. Nothing compares. Everything pales in comparison. It is truly worth the hype and then some. Like, there is not enough words to describe how good of a book this is. The world building is top tier. The romance is top tier. The intimacies, the spice, the details, the world, the characters, the dragons, everything is just absolute perfection. Roman Empire, god tier, the best of the best. Next question is a book that surprised me, and that has to go to Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. Now, this surprised me for quite a few reasons. Number one was because of the size of these books. Let me just start off by saying I never expected to love these books. I never expected to read these books, to be honest, because every time I saw them in the shop, I looked at them and I thought, 700 plus pages, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? There is no way. I'm not even going to touch it. I'm not even going to try, because it's a romance book. Why does it need to be 700 pages long? And tell me why the characters are 15 to 17. It's just not going to happen. And then one of my dearest friends, she always reads everything I recommend to her. And she was like, Luce, I love the Boys of Tommen series. Are you ever going to read it? And I was like, you know what? I am. Because I love you, and I feel like we've got such a similar taste. If you love that series, I'm gonna love this series, even if I don't want to read it. So I did, I picked it up, I read it, and this took the rug from under my feet completely. I loved this book so much. Book 2 is even better, in my opinion. I just thought this was absolutely incredible. You go on such an emotional roller coaster, the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, and there's no in between. Truly, you're either laughing or you're crying, and that's it. So if, like me, you were thinking, it's too big, it's too thick, the characters are too young, do not let that put you off, because I feel like I've been missing out my entire life not reading this series, because I had the same thoughts and feelings, and yet the books don't feel big enough. A work of art, and truly, if you are looking for something that is going to move you and leave an impact on you for the rest of your life, these books are it. So, new favourite authors that I discovered in 2024. There's been quite a few, but there are two for me that stand out. And the first one is obviously Sarah A. Parker. She was a new author for me this year. And to be honest, it kind of sounds crazy because I can't actually imagine not having read her books now. They almost make up my identity as who I am as a reader. They're all of my favourites. I love her work so much. Her writing is a beautiful experience to have as a reader. She truly writes in the most beautiful way I've ever experienced. And then the second author that was new for me that I have absolutely fallen in love with is Emily Henry. She is the goddess of romance. She is the palette cleanser queen. I will read every single thing that she writes. She really knows how to write an imperfectly perfect relationship and characters that have got their flaws and their differences and that feel so authentic and real and that make you feel seen and understood. And I feel like that's really unique and quite a difficult thing to achieve as an author, and she absolutely smashes it every single time. I love this next question. This next question is the happiest read of the year. And I've literally just read a book that absolutely made me the happiest of happy I could ever have been. It was everything I wanted in a book and so much more. Snowed In by Catherine Walsh. Now, I've never read a Christmas book before, never read Christmas romance. This was my first ever one. I didn't really know what I was in for, but I knew what I wanted. I wanted Christmas magic. I wanted romance. I wanted something that really got me in the Christmas spirit, in the Christmas mood. It just felt magical and special, and this was all that and so much more. It's set in Ireland, you've got a fake date in, it's got a snowed in cabin, and it's got Christmas magic in abundance, and it's just perfect. It got me in the mood. 5 stars, easy peasy. I just loved it. It brought such a smile to my face. I had the best time reading it, and I finished it and I was like, how could this be anything but 5 stars? It made me so happy. I loved it, and I feel as though it set the bar for Christmas romance now. I'm like, how can I top this? It was perfect. So the next question is most frustrating read of the year, and for me there is a clear contender for this, and it pains me to say because I really wanted to love this book with my whole heart and soul, but sadly we were just not a match. Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brando Sando. Now, this was my first Brandon Sanderson novel of the year, of my life, and I really thought this was gonna, start off my Brandon Sanderson journey really strong. People say either start with the Mistborn trilogy or Tress of the Emerald Sea. Now, I went for Tress of the Emerald Sea because it was standalone, and so I thought, okay, not a lot of commitment, it's gonna be like a one-time, one thing, great, and I like the concept of this book. I had to soft DNF this. I did have the intention of picking it up later in the year because I thought, I just need a break. Just need a little bit of a breather between this book because right now we're not compatible. And then since then, I've actually just realised I don't think we're compatible at all, and that's okay. I won't be going back into it. But the reasons why were because, well, I didn't feel like the story really went anywhere, to be honest. And the sense of humour in this just was not to my cup of tea. Didn't find it funny. I wasn't laughing out loud. I was like, right, okay. And I also know that there's a lot of inside jokes within the Cosmere within this book, and so because I hadn't read the rest of the Cosmere, I wasn't getting any of those inside jokes. I know that some of the narration style is a little bit different to normal as well, which I think is a really cool and interesting concept, but it just wasn't it for me, to be honest. I also did not feel connected to our female main character at all, and I just found it to be frustrating because I really wanted to love it so much, and I just didn't. Next, we've got my longest book I read this year, and I actually blooming forgot that I read this. In my head I was thinking, oh, it's House of Flame and Shadow, that's like 830 pages or something like that. And then when I had a look on Goodreads, it was Zodiac Academy Restless Stars. Now this is 1,153 pages, which is huge. And it felt, to be honest, it felt like a big book when I was reading it, because each blooming chapter on my Kindle was like 35 minutes left, and I was like, oh, I kind of hate it when that happens, when you're reading on your Kindle and the chapters are mega. I'm a short chapter girly through and through. I enjoyed this book. It wasn't my favourite of the series, but I still enjoyed it. I love being back in this world. I love seeing what happened for our characters and where the story kind of finished. I don't tend to recommend it because it's one of those things where you either love it or you hate it, and who's to say which side you're going to fall on? You just don't know. But I love this series personally. My shortest book was Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. Listen to this on audio. Super short actually. I think it was blooming like, I don't know, maybe 2.5 hours or something like that to listen to. So short, super impactful. First half was great, second half didn't love as much. It packs punch, it's quite hard and harrowing to read, but there's a lot of wisdom in it. A book that I haven't stopped thinking about has to be The Grey Shear by Kim Leggett. This is a standalone, it's dystopian. This is all about feminine rage. It's about the bonds between women trying to destroy a patriarchy who is determined to crush and destroy feminine strength, and the courage that it takes to do that and the sacrifices it requires. This is gonna make you feel. Oh my god, is this gonna make you feel? You're going to feel things you didn't know you were capable of feeling with this book. It is one of a kind, and it will live in your head rent-free forever. It's powerful. seriously powerful, moving stuff. It's one of those ones where you literally rattle through this like there's no tomorrow, and then you finish and you think, what do I do with myself now? This is the kind of book that this is. An unpopular book that I read this year and loved was What the River Knows and Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. These two books, this duology is absolutely incredible. I don't know why more people are not talking about this. I'm interpreting unpopular as in like not talked about. No one's talking about it and I don't know why. This duology is so unbelievably good. It feels like such a luxurious reading experience. It's a jewel of a gem of a duology, and one that you cannot put down, filled with mystery, filled with intrigue. It's historical fantasy. I don't think I'm a historical fantasy girly, and this took me by surprise, really and truly. And I think maybe that's why it's unpopular, because you immediately think historical fantasy is either for you or it's not, but actually that's not true. And I found myself thinking, wow, maybe I should read more historical fantasy because I enjoyed this so much. But it's got romance, it's got magic, it's got mystery. It is just beautiful, and the plot twists just keep coming and coming and coming. This trilogy is set in 19th century Buenos Aires, and it follows Inez, our female main character. She's strong, she's feisty, she's fearless, she's reckless, and she's impulsive. And she's currently living with her aunt whilst her parents are away in Egypt, and she receives a letter saying that her parents have passed away, but she's given no closure, no reasons as to why. Everything is very mysterious, everything is very like, something feels a little bit odd about this situation. And so she sets sail to Egypt to discover what's happened to her parents, everything that's gone on, all of the mysteries surrounding this, and the story proceeds from there, and it keeps you hooked the entire way through book one and the entire way through book two. So the next question is cringiest book I've read this year, and to be honest, I don't think I really read that many cringy books. So it was quite a difficult one to choose from, so I went for Cross the Line by Simone Soltani. Now this is an F1 romance. The reason why this made me cringe was just because at certain points with their interactions, I was like, I'm not vibing with this. This was spicy and sweet, but the sweetness was just a little bit too sweet, and I was like, And I love a romance because they're a palate cleanser and you kind of know what to expect, and it's always like feel good kind of vibes, and don't get me wrong, that's all of those things, but it almost just felt a little bit too sweet. Yeah, some of the interactions just made me cringe a little bit. Question number 17 is the book that I read with the most unique concept, and that has to go to the Red Rising series for me, because this altered the chemistry in my brain. I have never read something so unique, so fully transportive in my entire life. This world is so fleshed out, so three-dimensional. Cannot help but believe every single thing that happens in this series. It's sci-fi, it's incredible. Book one is a little bit slower. Book 2 and 3, they ramp right up, but full of plot twists, full of suspense. He really knows how to write an incredible series. Initially, it took a lot of figuring out in my brain. I definitely don't think it's beginner friendly personally, but I will be recommending this forever. I feel like this is just a masterclass in sci-fi. Question number 18 is a book that you would reread. Now, obviously I would read When the Moon Hatched, but I've already spoken about that, and I want to give another option of a book that I would love to reread, and that would be Funny Story by Emily Henry, because when I finished this book, I wanted to reread it immediately. I didn't want to leave this world. I didn't want to leave these characters. I felt so seen and understood and safe as a reader, and that is such a unique thing to feel. I found myself reflected in the pages of this book. For me, it's one of the best romances I've ever read. I am eager to reread. This was just really, really special, and I loved everything about this. And then finally coming to the last two questions, number 19 is reflecting on my reading goal and looking at what I want to read next year in terms of a reading goal. This year I set myself the goal of 65, and I did that so that I wouldn't feel pressured to read, because for me, maintaining that healthy balance and that healthy relationship with reading is so important. And I didn't feel pressured to read, and I did hit the goal. I think we're at 114 books at the moment that I've read so far. I feel like that's a really good place to be in for me in terms of moving forward to next year, and I want to take all that into next year and carry on the same thing. So for next year, I've set myself the goal of 52, because I'm like, okay, 4 books a month, that feels attainable for me. It feels like even if my life is really busy, I can still probably read 4 books a month. If I don't hit 52, that's fine. If I hit 52, great. And if I go over it, amazing. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's just a number. It's more about about the enjoyment that you get from reading and the experience that you have with those books rather than the number that you achieve at the end of the year, I think. And the final question is, what do I want to prioritize in terms of reading for next year? So I'm going to give you my 5 books / series that I want to prioritize. So the first one on that list is A City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. Now, I'm a Crescent City girl to my core. I love that series so much. It's got a real special place in my heart. And I've heard so many people say that this series right here is like Crescent City but better. And I'm like, okay. I'm A, intrigued, and B, I immediately want to devour this, because if that's true, this is gonna set my world on fire. Truly, 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 and I'm so excited at the thought of that possibility. And then we've got Bewitched by Laura Thalassa. Again, this is a series where the concept sounds really unique, really interesting, and I'm super intrigued by this. The people that I've seen read this have loved it, had a great time, have great things to say, and it's calling to me, and I feel really compelled to read this at the moment. So beginning of the year, I think this is going to be, again, one of the series that I'm prioritizing. Next series that I really want to read and have been wanting to read for a long time is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This is an older series. It's been around for a while and I just haven't had the time to read it. I want to binge this series. I want to go from book to book to book to book and consume it in its entirety. People say it gives them a similar feeling to how they felt when they read Throne of Glass, and I'm like, okay, give me that and then some. I also really want to read Sword of Kaigen. It's a standalone and it is supposed to make you feel. Books that make me feel, I love, I adore. You want to make me cry? Great. You want to make me laugh? Amazing. You want to take me on an emotional roller coaster? Yeah, yes, please. The next one that I want to prioritize is Dark Fever. This is quite the undertaking of a series. I feel like there's about 8 books or something like that. There's a lot of books in this series. I'm hoping with my entire heart and soul that this is going to be one of those series where it's like there's not enough books. You are desperate to read more. That's what I feel like and hope that I'm kind of in for with this. Is paranormal fantasy. Super addictive and bingeable is what I've heard. And it's also Sarah A. Parker's favourite series, so I'm like, yeah, I need to know what it's all about. And then there's kind of a tie, and one of them is A Red of Bones by Demi Winters. This is a Viking fantasy. I've never really read Viking fantasy, but I love The Last Kingdom. Really actually wanting to read something that has Vikings at its core. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like it's going to be right up my street, so I am super keen to read this. And then the other series that I really want to read is A Curse of Ophelia. This sounds really good. I think it got completed this year, so it's ready to read back to back to back, and I feel like we're going to have a good time with that. So that's my end of year book tag complete. It's been really nice to reflect and share that with you guys. I would absolutely love to know what your 3 standout reads have been for you this year. What have been the winners? What are your takeaway reads that you're like, yeah, these are pole position top 3? Let me know in the comments, because then maybe I can add some of those to my TBR for next year. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you at the next one.